It's really important to acknowledge our energy needs in society. We look at projections for population growth, we look at current rates of consumption, we look at current forms of energy generation, and it's crystal clear that we need more energy.
Right now, we are facing a future defined by climate change.
Climate change impacts all of us, and it impacts wildlife as well.
Moving to renewable energy is part of our evolution. We have to do this, and we have to do it in a way that doesn't sacrifice other values.
There is no impact-free way of living. Not for an algae cell floating down the Green River, not for someone like myself. And we shouldn't really feel guilty about using energy. We all use energy. What we've got to do is transition away from fossil fuels, and we've got to make sure that renewable resources of energy are developed correctly.
This is an opportunity to approach development, particularly on public lands, in a different way.
Renewable energy development is coming. In the last couple of years, we've seen the largest investments into renewables ever in our country's history. We passed the Bipartisan Infrastructure Package and the Inflation Reduction Act, which infused billions of dollars into developing renewables across the country.
Hunters and anglers should be thinking about and advocating for a seat at the table in these discussions.
Sportsmen and women are very uniquely qualified to take on this challenge. We're out there on the landscape year after year. We see the changes season after season. We are specifically trying to watch and observe wildlife and their behaviors. And that kind of expertise is critical for making good decisions that help wildlife as we move forward and develop these resources.
By asking the right questions at the right time of the right people, they can play a tremendous role in minimizing the impacts of these projects.
A lot of times the indirect disturbance impacts are greater than the direct disturbance. And when I say indirect, I mean things like traffic, roads, pipelines, and the need to conduct that electricity to its ultimate desired location. Oftentimes, the biggest cost to energy is transmission.
One of the issues that is critical in the development of solar energy like this is the issue of getting the power into the grid. You've got all of the power lines and all of the substructures. You've got roads to maintain this, and that is all impacting the habitat. Where we need power and where we can generate power should be as close together as possible. When you have fences like this that are barriers, the wildlife are going to walk around those fences, and they're going to be steered in the direction of the fence itself. And so when you have two intersecting fences, wildlife are going to be steered into that intersection. Evident here is with these two converging fences, all of these tracks are coming together, and the grazing pressure is so high that you're seeing the disappearance of palatable plants. Every project like this that comes in causes more impact, and the cumulative impact of all of these projects means diminished habitat for wildlife and diminished wildlife numbers.
Migration is really a key strategy for mule deer. If development interferes with that movement, it can have really bad effects on their survival and reproduction, how they gain food, how they gain fat, if they survive the winter, if that fat can carry them over into the next year. And so the major thing that we can do is really try to reduce the amount of development that interferes with migration corridors so that they have the ability to move freely across the landscape.
Wildlife crossings are something that we can be really proud of. It wasn't that long ago that people weren't making wildlife crossings, and now we've rolled up our sleeves, we've found the funding, we've found the expertise.
A lot of mule deer and elk use this area, so they move across the highway quite a bit. So they recently, in the last year, opened up an overpass which allows elk and mule deer to move from one side of the highway to the other side. And it's hopefully going to reduce quite a bit of animal vehicle collisions and allow for easier movement for animals.
That's a good example of something we can do with renewables. Show the companies, show the regulators where the sensitive habitat is. With this huge privilege of these public lands and this awesome array of wildlife that we get to enjoy in America, we have the obligation to step up and advocate for those resources and tell our stories about how amazing they are to us and how amazing they are to our American ethos and how they belong in our history and in our future. And without that, we would be losing something of our own identity.
Be hopeful. We can have wildlife habitat, and energy.
Hunters, anglers, citizens, everybody who's impacted by this, we need you engaged. When you've been out on the landscape and you've experienced the awesomeness of these resources, it really helps you understand what it takes to make this kind of thing happen and what it's gonna take to take us into the future.